so you can play.
Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and it's time for another Storytime Interlude for the Storms of Ixia 40k narrative campaign. And if you're not familiar with this, the Storytime Interludes are where I give additional backstory that will help you to know more of the characters or more of the history or whatever else it happens to be. So these are not required to be able to watch the battle reports, but it'll help enrich your experience and get to know more of what is going on. In this interlude, we're going to talk about Captain Wison and Commissar Cruchef and their relationship in the campaign before and how they knew each other and how they kind of interact at this point, and a bit more of their history as well, although it's going to be more about Cruchef than Wison, but you'll see what I mean in a second. Commissar Cruchef, well, he was, of course, if he's a commissar, that meant he was in the Scala Progenium, where orphans and other kids are put and trained to either become adepts or the scions for the Imperial Guard, or in some rare cases, inquisitors. Well, Cruchef excelled in the Schola Progenium. He showed an incredible loyalty to the Emperor and an incredible hatred towards chaos and Xenos. Anything that threatened the Empire, he just loathed. He just was always about that. Like, he's very, very faithful to the Emperor and anything that has to do with him. And so he was quickly singled out for service in the Officio Praefectus. In other words, to become a commissar. And while his training was going on, it was a little bit interrupted as there was a huge orc wog that hit the Jornuffian sector, of which the planet on where his Schola was attacked. And so he was quickly inducted into the ranks of the Imperial Guard to serve as a commissar. So he was just basically like, you're a commissar now, get up there and start fighting and prove your mettle. And so when he was first inducted as a commissar, he was put into a regiment where there was one of the commissars who was recently killed, and so he was filling that void. And he was just a low-level commissar, nothing special because he had just come out of the school. But it turns out that the commander of this Imperial Guard regiment was Commander Wison, now known as Captain Wison, as you're going to find out why later on. And Cruchef quickly learned that Wison was a tactical genius. Wison was relatively new in his career as well, but he had this uncanny ability to be able to direct a larger scale war. Even though he was over just a regiment, he was able to kind of picture things in a more macro setting than more micro. So he wasn't really good at being like a sergeant in a squad and organizing just 10 guys, but he was really good at organizing hundreds, if not thousands, of his Imperial Guardsmen. And so they of course had this huge fight against this orc wog that lasted several months, and on quite a few occasions the two fought side by side. But Wison, more often than not, was found at the back, not in close combat, while he was leading all his forces leading from the rear. And whereas Cruchef just kind of was drawn to the front. He just hated the orcs so much that he just wanted to be up there, and he didn't want to just be commanding people to kill them. He wanted to be killing them himself as well. And so he quickly showed a really good close combat aptitude, and he was very determined. So all the men would normally think Wison a coward for always not being in the front lines, always being at the back, but soon they'd learn to really respect him because they could trust him. His ideas and his tactics were so sound that he was incredibly efficient, much more efficient than most of the other commanders out there who kind of just threw their regiments into the grind. And it's not that Wison necessarily cared a lot about his men, although I guess there was some friendships and attachments there. It was more just that he just saw them as a resource and he wanted to use the resources properly. Cruchef, on the other hand, didn't really have those tactical insights, and so he was very respectful of Wison because he could see how well he was doing with that. And so instead of thinking him a coward for staying in the back, both Cruchef and the Imperial Guardsmen under Wison's control soon really learned to respect him. However, while they respected Wison, they quickly learned to fear Cruchef, because Commissar Cruchef had no problem summarily executing any guardsman who showed the least signs of wavering or lack of faith. As soon as they were even thinking, as soon as a thought popped into their head, maybe we should run away, they would most likely be facing a bolt pistol to the same spot in their mind that had that thought. And so they had to worry about Cruchef and make sure that they were always at their best around him. But at the same time, they had a lot of awe watching him fight, just because wherever he was, the battle went better. And so it was kind of this weird dichotomy with the guardsmen respected Wison, who was back there telling them the really good strategies, and they respected and feared Cruchef because they wanted to be close to him, but they didn't want to be close to him at the same time. They wanted to be close because wherever he was, enemies died much faster. But also wherever he was, guardsmen sometimes got executed if things didn't go so well. So they really worked well together over this campaign. There's even one situation where Cruchef was with a squad of guardsmen, and they were fighting orcs, and all of a sudden these 3 huge orc knobs just come just piling through with their big close combat weapons. And the guardsmen with them started to turn and flee from it because what could they do against 3 huge knobs? And Cruchef quickly turned around, shot one of them down, and yelled at the other ones to turn around, show their faith in the Emperor, and fight these knobs. Well, fought they did. Most of the guardsmen were killed from the knobs, but Cruchef personally took down 2 of them, while the guardsmen shot down the other one with their last guns and other weapons that they had. And so he quickly was just gaining a lot of renown in this campaign. This campaign went for quite a long time, several months, before the orcs were finally defeated. And once it finished, Cruchef and Wison by this point were, I guess you could call them friends. They definitely respected each other a lot, and Cruchef listened to Wison's counsel, and Wison listened to Cruchef as well. But I would say to the point of where they were friends. And if Wison knew, it's like, he's looking at all his men and how to use them, but he knew if he needed a hole punched in a certain area of the enemy's defense, he would make sure to put Commissar Cruchef with that squad or with those groups of Imperial Guardsmen and put him right there, because he knew that wherever Cruchef was, the forces were more strong and were much more determined. So after the campaign ended, both Wison and Cruchef received promotions. Commander Wison became Captain Wison and was set over even more regiments because his commanding officers saw just how efficient he was. It was just uncanny that when you put out all the stats side by side, his were just leagues ahead of everybody else in percentage killed, and how many enemies they were able to kill, and how many defenses they were able to win, and how many assaults they were able to win. It was just so obvious that he was cut out to command a much larger force than just the regiment that he was given. And Cruchef, of course, with all the trophies that he had by this point and all the stories that were told of him and how much devotion he had, was promoted already to Lord Commissar. So it's something that you really have to work hard for, and he was already that. And then they both boarded the frigate Ixia, and they were sent off to their next campaign. And we all know what happened next, as they were drawn in to the Amaldu sector onto the planet Ixia, where Wison showed his tactical prowess in being able to organize all of the Imperial Guard forces on a planet where they were all scattered, and in between them were orcs and Tyranids, and a lot of the time there wasn't even the frigate able to tell them and coordinate. He had to do everything just through his Vox channels and with maps and stuff, and he was able to coordinate all these regiments and use the resource really well to do everything that we've seen so far in this campaign. And of course, Cruchef has shown his mettle, and even though he got cut down several times, he's been determined. His soul won't give up the body, and they just keep patching it back together and sticking bionics on him, and he just goes right back into the fight and just does some incredible things, especially what you're going to see as we go into the last missions, which will be this coming Thursday. So stay tuned for the last 2 battle reports this coming Thursday, where we have our season finale of the Storms of Ixia 40K narrative campaign. Thanks for watching, and happy wargaming.